this restoring equality of opportunity and meritocracy executive order that Donald Trump signed today is really bad. It is doing actually the complete opposite of what the title would suggest. It's going after federal regulations that basically enforce equality, because a lot of times programs that are designed to be equal are going to impact different groups differently. And what he wants to do is take away the protections that make it so that everyone gets protected by the Civil Rights Act. For example, he says, quote, all existing regulations, guidance, rules, or orders that impose disparate impact, liability, or similar requirements, and they are trying to take those out. They have a order to get the Attorney General to list them all to him. And just so you know, this is Title VI that is referenced in this document. As you can see, he's going after these presidential approvals of regulations promulgated. This includes giving programs for financial aid to those who are underserved. So yeah, going after Civil Rights Act.
Okay, one quick thing before I go to bed. Donald Trump just put out an executive order effectively trying to end civil rights enforcement in the United States by specifically directing the Department of Justice to stop all enforcement related to Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, which deals with what's called disparate impact. And disparate impact is the idea that if there are patterns of racial inequality in a given set of institutions or whatnot, that might actually be evidence of discrimination. And the reason why that might be evidence of discrimination is because all things equal, let's say there are 100 positions for electricians and there are 100 perfectly qualified applicants. And 13 of those applicants are black and 87 of those applicants are white. You would expect there to be 13 black electricians hired, 87 white electricians hired. But let's say it turns out that not only are there not 13 black electricians hired, there are no black electricians whatsoever at this firm, despite the fact that there is a pool of black people who are perfectly qualified to be electricians. A disparate impact analysis would say, well, maybe there's something strange going on here. We have to check it out. It's one of the most valuable tools we have for basically trying to see if discrimination is happening, and Trump wants to get rid of it. Now, earlier in the year, for the past couple months, I've been saying that the administration's attack on DEI is not about meritocracy or whatever at all. First of all, in the vast majority of workplaces and firms in the United States, especially those older than like 40 years, there is no golden age of meritocracy, right? Like prior basically to civil rights law, these places were governed by like rank favoritism and racial preferences for white men. But second of all, the administration's war on DEI wasn't even about DEI. It was really about integration. It was an attack on anyone who was black or a woman or queer, who is in a position of authority or leadership or simply, prestige, high regard. It was an attack on them and an attempt to say that they did not belong in the basis of their identity, regardless of their qualifications or their skills. And I just want to say that the people who argued otherwise, who said, no, the DEI has gone too far, which I'm not really even sure what that means. No, the administration has a point. No, you people were rubes. You people were idiots and rubes. And the truth of the matter is that this is a segregationist administration interested in imposing rigid hierarchies of race and gender on the country, and will use the power of the federal government to do as much of it as it possibly can. And if it can't do it directly, then it will facilitate it by destroying the government's capacity to enforce the anti-discrimination law. This has been obvious from the jump, and I think that if you're a professional political commentator and you just refuse to see it, then either, again, you're a rube and an idiot, or, and I think this is actually the case and for some people, you're just sympathetic to the goal and are too much of a coward to say so. So, good night.
I'm tired. I'm going to bed. But first, in another executive order, the Trump administration is now trying to eliminate the disparate impact liability or generally the Civil Rights Act. This is about legalizing workplace segregation again. Disparate impact is a term for a facially neutral policy that leads to a racial or another class outcome. A poll tax is a classic example. So the policy is facially neutral, but it has a discriminatory outcome. Now again, executive orders are not laws, and the Trump administration cannot erase a standard of review that was established by the Supreme Court. Still, Trump is charging any agency within his purview how to handle discrimination claims, and this is not good.
Yesterday, that is on April 23rd, 2025, Trump released 2 executive orders. Both of them involve African American people. The first one has to do with HBCUs. I'm not going to address that in this video. That's the upcoming video. What I want to address in this video is something really that I addressed almost a year ago, having to do with Project 2025. And this is about the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Specifically, it has to do with something called disparate impact. It is extremely important, disparate impact, when filing and litigating civil rights cases. So this is going to have a big impact on civil rights cases now that Trump is doing his best to get rid of disparate impact. All right, now, before I go any further, I want you to hear what I said in that video last year, July 2nd to be exact. All right, let's listen to that. Kevin Roberts is the leader of the Heritage Foundation, which gave birth to Project 2025. And what you see on the screen now is the manual, that 932-page manual that they've written that covers a whole host of things. I have been scouring that document, and there's one thing that I want to share with you today about what they intend to do, which will definitely unleash a lot more anti-Black racism. All right, let me explain what I'm saying. So disparate impact. Disparate impact is probably a word you've never heard in your life, or a term that you've never heard in your life. In that manual that I just told you about, let me quote these words. Courts have ruled that even without evidence of overt, intentional discrimination, such results might suggest discrimination. This doctrine of disparate impact could be ended legislatively or at least narrowed through the regulatory process by a future administration. So, Dr. Roberts here is saying that they want to see the disparate impact doctrine done away with, like they did DEI, like they did affirmative action. Because disparate impact, we litigators, practitioners, civil rights litigators, we use disparate impact to prove our civil rights cases all the time. Because quite often when we bring these lawsuits, these civil rights lawsuits, we don't have intentional discrimination or overt discrimination. We as Black Americans know we don't have to be called the N-word to be discriminated against. We know that, having been the victims of discrimination all our lives. We know that racists nowadays are much more smarter and wiser than to use a racial slur. Nonetheless, they discriminate against African Americans all the time. And you see, what the law requires is that you show that the discrimination was intentional. And again, short of somebody calling you the N-word, it is very, very difficult to prove that the discrimination was, in fact, intentional. So the law allows us to show disparate impact. Disparate impact means that we can show that blacks disproportionately have been affected by this type of discrimination. And that then shows the intent of the discrimination. So it's a way to sort of get around the fact that intentional discrimination is very, very hard to prove. If we can show that enough blacks have suffered some injury or some damages because of a particular type of discrimination, then that meets the disparate impact doctrine. But they want to get rid of that so that a civil rights lawsuit will be dismissed by a judge unless you're able to show just some overt, intentional racism. And again, that's hard to do nowadays. So there it is. You heard it again. That was July 2nd, 2024. I warn you, my people whom I love with my heart, not to vote for Trump because he was going to go after the civil rights movement, the Civil Rights Act, civil rights laws, disparate impact, and any other law or legislation or policy that helps African American people. I warn you. And I'll be honest with you. I am frustrated. I'm angry, to be honest with you. Because I spent months warning black people not to fall for MAGA's lies. I knew Trump was coming for civil rights. I knew it. How did I know it? Because I'm a civil rights attorney and a litigator. My firm files these cases. We fight these cases. I know the power of civil rights laws. And I knew what was coming. Yet, 2.2 million black folks voted for Trump. And this is what he's doing. And guess what? Not only did 2.2 million blacks vote for Trump, Trump won by 2.2 million votes. No joke. The same amount of black folks who voted for Trump are the same number, approximately, by which he won by. Let's not forget, in 2016, millions of black folks voted for the couch. They set out the election, and Trump won then too. And both times, he did two things. He thanked black voters, and he unleashed anti-black initiatives that hit us hard. I know that Trump and MAGA, his inner circle, they sit around and they laugh at black people.